The initial contact with the Xenos had been as strange and anticlimactic as most first encounters tend to be when it came to civilizations not a part of the Galactic Federation. Their sleek ships had shimmered into existence at the edge of the system, a ripple in space that no early warning system was designed to pick up. Then, there were the grainy transmissions, initial attempts at linguistic analysis, the inevitable cultural misunderstandings. And of course, there was the poorly concealed disdain when they finally conducted a scan of our planet. It started with the power grids. Ancient, inefficient, they declared, surprised we hadn't yet blown ourselves into oblivion amidst such technological squalor. Our computers, the beating heart of a global civilization, apparently ran at speeds that would make their personal entertainment devices yawn in boredom. As for our network security, well, the universal translator seemed to fail to find an appropriately condescending term, but the telepathic equivalent of a snort was unmistakably implied. Dr. Ramirez, the closest thing we had to a first contact specialist, took it all with a smile that held more than a hint of strained patience. Humans were adaptable. It's what had gotten us this far, from caves to the stars to this absurdly mismatched negotiation table. Turns out, while the Xenos scoffed, we listened, we observed, and we learned. The Xenos, for all their sleek tech and disdain for our clunky systems, had made a few critical mistakes. First, they believed their superiority made them invulnerable. That speed was a substitute for subtlety. Second, they assumed that by communicating and demonstrating their tech, they held all the cards. What they never expected was that we were playing a different game entirely. Our computers might have been laughable to them, but they were the perfect mousetrap. While they buzzed around our networks, demonstrating the superiority of their firewalls and encryption, we focused on something else, the patterns, the underlying architecture of their technology. They were so busy showing off that they never noticed the quiet back doors our engineers had meticulously woven into their demonstrations, the subtle compromises engineered during the seemingly harmless data exchanges. It took weeks. Data flowed, seemingly meaningless, as scientists on both sides pored over shared research that was either obsolete on our side or near incomprehensible on theirs. The Xenos grew increasingly smug and a bit impatient. Were these primates ever going to offer anything of value, or were they simply wasting their precious time? The switch was almost anticlimactic. Ramirez, in his cramped office, triggered a cascade of code. Our ancient computers didn't suddenly blaze with newfound speed. In fact, it was the opposite. They fell silent. One by one, the tendrils we'd woven into the Xeno network activated, not with brute force, but with subtlety we'd learned from them. Their network buckled, not from a frontal assault, but from 1,000 tiny pinpricks from the inside out. The moment of realization on the Xeno side was deeply satisfying, Ramirez later gleefully admitted. Panic replaced arrogance. Their firewalls, their encryption turned against them. The complex systems designed to keep intruders out, now locking them in. They lashed out blindly, but their attacks splattered uselessly against the now dormant sections of our network, the bait they'd so gleefully swallowed. This negotiation wasn't proceeding on their terms anymore. In the aftermath, there were no glorious space battles or desperate last stands. Instead, there were tense exchanges, a new, grudging respect replacing the initial disdain on the Xeno side. Humans, they'd come to realize, possessed a different kind of brilliance. Perhaps they conceded an alliance of speed and subtlety might be far more potent than either one in isolation. And so, it began. Not with a treaty nor declarations of friendship, but with a team of their baffled engineers huddled over terminals with ours, deciphering the maddeningly elegant way we'd turn their own tools against them. After all, the Xenos had much to teach us about speed, but we had a lesson or two to impart about the deceptive power of patience. and the undeniable thrill of surpassing expectations. In the sterile confines of the makeshift Joint Research Lab, the air crackled with a tension that had nothing to do with the half-disassembled Xeno communication arrays. It was, Dr. Ramirez observed with a wry grin, the tension of professional rivalry, tempered with a healthy dose of grudging admiration. The breakthrough, the initial crack in the Xeno network, was just the beginning. Their systems were a marvel of speed and efficiency, but also layered with an inherent rigidity. They'd sacrificed adaptability in their pursuit of pure, unyielding security. Once cracked, their network was like a finely engineered machine, its very precision becoming a fatal liability. The next stage was where the Xeno engineers were forced to begrudgingly admit the brilliance of the human approach. Our hopelessly outdated systems might have been slow, but they were organic, messy, a tangle of protocols and workarounds piled upon decades of technological evolution. They'd learned through trial and error the art of resilience, and our engineers were now gleefully exploiting that lesson to drive their counterparts up the wall. Redundancy, Ramirez lectured, a twinkle in his eye, as the Xenos scowled at a bafflingly simple bit of ancient code. It's not elegant. It hogs up absurd amounts of memory. But guess what? You take one piece out and the whole structure doesn't crumble. There was muttering in Xeno, the translation software struggling to keep up with both the technical terminology and the increasingly irritated inflections of their voices. Ramirez didn't care. Humankind had finally earned the right to gloat just a little. The true lessons, however, weren't just about cracking codes and bragging rights. Each compromise, each laborious reverse engineering of a Xeno protocol revealed echoes. There were hints of familiar mathematics, of concepts humans had abandoned as too inefficient, yet seemed somehow embedded deep in their rivals' tech. And then there were the gaps, the fragments that, even with the best efforts of linguistic analysis, refused to make sense. "You're holding back," a frustrated Xeno engineer finally blurted out, echoing what Ramirez had suspected for days. "Not everything, maybe, but you're hiding the heart of it." Ramirez leaned back, taking a sip of terrible coffee, the one thing humans and Xenos seemed to agree on. Perhaps, he admitted, trust wouldn't be built in a day. Or perhaps, he gestured toward the mess of dissected tech, our true advantage lies in our messy, beautiful imperfections. He wasn't just speaking about technology. It was a lesson the Xenos, with their precise hierarchies and rigid cultural protocols, were only beginning to understand about humanity itself. Collaboration, when it truly began, was both exhilarating and maddening. Human scientists, used to the chaotic churn of grant proposals, peer review, and blind alleys, found their Xeno counterparts maddeningly methodical, yet frustratingly secretive. Meanwhile, the Xenos' reliance on speed led them to dismiss the painstaking process of human experimentation and theoretical groundwork. The breakthrough wasn't in merging the two species' knowledge, but in forcing each to confront the flaws in their own approach. The result wasn't some fantastical technological leap, but a series of steady, almost deceptively subtle refinements. Xenofirewalls gained layers of redundancy. Their encryption protocols adopted concepts of decoy data streams and calculated misdirection. Human networks, pushed to optimize, found new life in selectively borrowing some of the Xenos' underlying structure, becoming faster without sacrificing their inherent resilience. And hidden within this exchange were the seeds of a far more profound shift. Because out in the depths of space, there were other players, other forces watching this unlikely dance of cooperation. Some might have seen the alliance as weakness. The alliance was proof of something far more dangerous. Humans, adaptable and relentless, paired with the raw potential of the Xeno. That was a force that could not just survive against the galaxy's hidden threats, but evolve to outpace them altogether.